Facing the new year, Tafshin Pei Gimel, Plois Geula. Let's first understand what we're expecting to complete in this year. Pei Beis, Plois Bina, the miracles of Bina, which will lead to the miracles of Geula. Don't take my word for it, take the Rebbe's word for it. So every Jew is said to have a nitzutz of Mashiach, this perfect spark of divinity within them, that is revealed through implementing a certain philosophy called Chassidus. When you live like the Baal Shem Tov, when you apply that, that is what reveals the nitzutz of Mashiach within you, and you see miracles in everything. As that year when the Rebbe said this, that was the year Shnas Niflois B'Kol. This year it's Plois B'Kol, with the pay. They reached the Nun Sharabina. Moshe Rabbeinu only achieved the 50th gate of understanding when he was Nifter, when he passed away. Now, 30 years later, we reflect on these words. And the pella that we're expecting, the plois, welcome Peter, the plois, the miracles are going to be in this physical world without having to pass on at all. Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to go into the land alive, not brought in later. So maybe that's the difference between Niflois B'Kol and Plois B'Kol, with losing the nun. I've been trying for a whole entire year to figure that out. What's the difference between Plois and Niflois? We say Niflois is nun Plois, the 50 miracles. Plois must be the infinite miracles that we're expecting. Literally, that is what the Rebbe says the Geula is going to have. Miracles that make the miracles from Exodus look like a Hollywood B job. Like, try and watch the original 10 Commandments now. The hairspray wasn't even as advanced as ours. When he comes down from the mountain, his hair is all different. That's hilarious. So we want to understand what this means for each person to have this nitzutz of Mashiach and capable of experiencing in this year Plois V'Kol miracles before the year is over. We know that you pay for something at the end of the term. This is the end of the term of this year, and we're expecting the greatest miracles, Plois V'Kol miracles and everything, paid up at the end of the year like a honest employee year. We learned in past lessons here. You have ability to experience the reward in advance of the general sabbatical, let's say. So we have had this historically. We have individuals that preempted a universal collective advance, a revolution of the mind. We've had this in living examples, welcome, in the Avos. It says, Shleisha hit iman, HaKadosh Baruch Hu B'Elam Hazameinu Ha'ilam Haba. They had the tam, they had the experience, the taste of the world to come in this world. Eluhain, these are they, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Avram Diksiv B'Kol. It says the words B'Kol regarding Avram in everything. The acronym of the current year, the year that we have to see the payment of all of our efforts and all of our suffering this year. It was a hard year for a lot of people. And I really hope a refuah shlema to the world. And also Yitzchak, it says Mikol, of everything. And Yaakov, it says Kol, everything. Yaakov, Yeshli Kol, I have everything. So they had a taste of the world to come before the main course was served to the rest of the people of the world. So there's just these three that we are the ones who inherit that tradition. The tradition of how you can reveal the Nitzutz Mashiach and live like that in our difficult times where everyone's on TikTok. And there's not even anyone around to speak to, let alone those are very dark times, yet we have access to the most brilliant teachings that have ever existed in the sense of revealing secrets. That is the gateway towards living this, okay? You don't believe me, look it up on page 8. I just don't have time to go through every source. You have to trust me by now. And since we are the final moments of exile, every Jew has everything, B'kol Mikol Kol, everything, all of the everything that the Avos, our forefathers, had, is available to every Jew now, as we conquer the final stand of Klippa. As Allah Zainin and Yanim Zal Zain Ba'ifinachi Teivachi Mushlam, that everything you do should be hang ten. Shuma Teiva, not lacking anything good. The main thing is that now we have the perfection of B'kol Mikol Kol, the Rebbe says, everything and everything and everything, Degula Mitzvah Shleim, the true and complete redemption, with Pashtus V'gashmias, in the simple sense, in the physical sense, Behissin to Birchas HaMazain Funid, and as we say in the grace after meals, Vas Mebet B'kol Mikol Kol, which when we refer to this everything, 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 V'chalta v'savata v'rachta es Hashem Elokecha al ha'aretz hateva asher nasan lach, in the land that Hashem gives us. As mimakum Eretz Yisrael b'pashtus, that we're going to go to the Holy Land in the simple sense, the literal sense. V'teikef b'eifin sheyerusha v'kivush halukas haaretz, and immediately it should be an inheritance and a conquest and a settling and it, like dividing up the pie of the land. And alle idin gefindt sich dort ish tachas gafne v'tachas te nasi. And there, everyone is going to have their own farm, and their own fig trees, and their own cider. Begula mitzvah shleima. Va'ifin as das peilt euch eifin avar. And this is why I wanted to read this part to you, because this is all incredible stuff. Because I want you to understand the power you have to heal your past. I often have said, and other great rabbis, Y.Y. Jacobson among them, tell it how it is, that the world is in a trauma, and really, the Rebbe meant literally, the end of Birurim has arrived. We have to open our eyes in the literal sense. We have to see things right. How are we going to see things right when we're living in this perpetual trauma, and it seems like nothing can heal us from the Holocaust? The Jewish people who ruled the world in times of yore, right, are intended to rule the world for bringing peace to the entire world. Like Shlomo Melech wanted to do that. That's why he had 1,000 wives. He married all the princesses to make a diplomatic status quo where everyone's in one family. That was his mission. Mashiach's going to do it with one wife, because he's going to do it through ideas, but it's going to come out with the effect of what Shlomo was, which was peace on earth and prosperity for all. He started with the prosperity for all and wanted to that be the environment that will increase wisdom in the world, and everyone will reveal their nitzutz Mashiach, and Mashiach will be here in that way. So he bended the rules to accomplish that. We believe King Shlomo Melech, King Solomon, was an absolute righteous person and never did a sin. 40 years he was taken over and possessed by a demon. And he was out in the streets, or lost in himself completely for 40 years. Or I think he reigned for... How long did he reign for? 80 years. I'm thinking that doesn't make sense. Okay, the timeline, check it out. So, how do you know when you're a candidate for this? I mean, everyone is a candidate, clearly, we've been saying. How could I fix the past so my present could look a little brighter? I mean, I hate having to use examples from the military, the history of our military and fighting that has shaped our history so much. It's such a shame that that constitutes the human experiment. War and dealing with the suffering of that. I truly believe we're still in the trauma of the Holocaust as a nation, and we have so much greatness to achieve when the world realizes that we're interested in something a higher aspiration entirely, and if they don't understand it, know that it's for the good of the world. So if you see what gangster culture espouses as important, and Chassidus, on the other, Lahavdil, on the other side, it becomes obvious to a thinking person with a heart, if there's anyone left. We have the power to correct the past. With this recognition that everything's available for us to transform ourselves, to live in the state of Geula, that should be in a way, the Rebbe says, Peilt eich eifen avar, that affects also the past. As afal pivas beregazeh mamish is Mashiach adayin leva, that although in this moment we haven't had the complete revelation of Mashiach that you can dance around with a flag and march off to the Holy Land and say it's mine, is b'shas ervet kumen beregel achrezeh, so that the time where that actually happens, that ibermachen durch areinstellendem alef fun alufa shalaylam, there is going to be a transformation accomplished through bringing divinity into the world. So we have the ability to do that now, affecting the past. You bring the aleph into Gelo, the letter aleph, the first letter of the aleph base, starts with the allusion to Alufa Shaloyla, master of the universe. You bring the aleph into the gimel of Gela, and it was one, you don't have to change anything. Even the past itself is rectified inherently. We just have to look at it differently from the future now. And when we do, that's bringing the aleph into the world, affecting also the preceding moments. If we came to a decision that now we're going to accept the mindset of redemption and be redeemed and experience a new world because it's a new mind, when you do that, you look at your past in such a way that said, wow, this led me to this moment. All of that journey, like that example we've given from that survival story in the Amazon or something, the guy is finished completely, and the only thing he could think of to get him out of the jungle and catch his ride home is to agitate a colony of fire ants. So he puts the fire ants all over him, which causes him extreme pain, and he runs, and he makes it to the water to wash himself off and survive. When we finally survive, we retell the story of our past in a way that shows a divine insight. This is how I got to this moment. Now we are free and returning to the land. The moment before this led me to this moment. Fun Geila, that means that the exile, which was just a lonely Geila, now has the aleph inserted into it. It becomes Geula. Azay zalm zayin a chelik fun Geula. Every single facet of experience becomes a part of the redemption itself. Now, when that is truly felt, what's going to happen? The Rebbe thought it appropriate to point this out, I think on several occasions, that it's known that the Rebbes would often say that the arrival of Mashiach will be written about they will be publicized in the newspapers. And that becomes something that speaks to what it means that Mashiach is here. It's when the media itself, the most divisive of all machinery, becomes the one to proclaim that the arrival of such a time. Just to read you the short note on it. It says in Teras Shalom, the Alter Rebbe said that Mashiach will be written about in the newspapers. All Jews will go in the times of Mashiach immediately as it's written about in the newspapers that he goes. As if that becomes the litmus test of what is going to be definitive of the redemptive moment, when the newspapers recognize it, showing what low frequency that we're aiming for. This is going to tie into the ploys Bina that we're in, the miracles of Bina, of understanding. When you understand something, that becomes what's in the Sunday papers for you. It's what you live. It becomes the concealed world, which is the world of Bina. There are times where we can have insight into it. The understanding is the potential to fathom something and internalize something. Okay, I think I just want to do a few more of these with you, because really the main protein pills, the main impetus, the main thing that makes all of this come together is tfilla, as we've said many times. So I stumbled across, and Chayal, I was inspired on the Baal Shem Tov's birthday to let's see what the Baal Shem Tov wrote. He wrote incredible things. His disciples wrote this for him. It's as authentic as you would want with the Kahas logo on it. Becoming an official part of Chabad. Anything in here, and this is talking about what Dveikus is. So something that becomes, in Chassidus Chabad, mostly meditations to take you to Dveikus. You speak a little bit less about Dveikus itself in Chabad. Whenever it appears, it's become something very special. Whereas the Baal Shem Tov, I would say a good percentage of this is about that. Like probably 60% is about Vegas as opposed to maybe like 5%. So I think it's the time that we really get back to the Baal Shem Tov's roots and know what the well springs are. The well springs are the Chassidus, yes. You're meant to take outward, yes, meaning to your mind, to whatever you're living with. This should be what you're living with. But it's a gateway to take you somewhere. Bina is a gateway. The Nun Share Bina is a gateway to take you somewhere. It's meant to take you to Da'as, to experience. So that occurs in Dveikus. Bina is a hispaninus that takes you there. Da'as is when you're there. We have to know where we're going to know what we should look for and train. What are we going to train? What are we going... If you're a tennis player, you probably look at a yellow balls bouncing around a little differently. They got to know where to stand from where it bounces and the spin on it and everything. We have to understand what to look for when we're talking about a time that's unfolding before our eyes of Maleh Haaretz Deya Es Hashem, Da'as. Da'as, I'm interpreting, and based on all the things that I'm sharing with you every day, is accomplished through tefillah. So here it is, further treatise on tefillah. This is like the Super Bowl of advice. You never know, in rugby, you don't know who's got the ball sometimes. You got to tackle everybody in sight. Remember, King David fought on the front lines. Around him was the most great warriors of the time, because they didn't want their very heroic, brave and courageous king to be killed in war, chas v'shalom. So you had the biggest heroes around him. That, let's say King David wore this regular foot soldier uniform. No one would be able to really know, they didn't have the internet then, what he looked like. So you'd think maybe it's that guy. I don't know, I'm too busy fending off swords. Leave me alone. How am I supposed to find the king and end the war? So you would know where the king is by where you see the most concerted huddle. If people are, so in tfilla, that means you see that there's a difficult point. You're trying to march forward. You got your orders, your marching orders are to go forward right through the Yam Suf or whatever's in your path. Scorpion, snakes, whatever it is. I'm blazing through and I have to be confident they're going to melt away. But you see a certain area that's not melting away so easily. And you know that that is where you're supposed to be focused. And once you crack on through to that, there's a much greater reward of inspiration there. Okay, maybe just one or two of these because the hour is getting late. Hey, sometimes it's difficult to daven and you don't have any faith that today you're actually going to succeed. So strengthen yourself more and you're going to end up with a much greater state of awe. And consider the following allegory of a king that goes out to war and he dresses himself so that he's not recognized. In other words, he dresses like the pawn beside him. V'hine hachamim hamakirim eloch hamelach v'tnuesav, wise people who recognize the movement of the king and his motions. In those days, they didn't know what besides wearing a helmet. You have to know the actual way that the king is moving to say that is a royal person. So that would take wise men, chamim. But those who are not so wise, makirim hamelech b'makam sheyesh sham shmira yisera v'gedela. Okay, I didn't understand this before when I introduced it. There's two levels here. There's the levels of the wise who could see by the motion of the king where the king is. So you don't have to enter the throes, the thick of the throw. Maybe the king is off in the periphery trying to get at the archers. You don't know what his job is and you don't know where to look, but you know the movement of a kingly person. So you have to be a wise person to do that. What if you're not so wise yet? You see where the main thrust is going, that's where they're protecting the king. So when you encounter this person, the less wise person might encounter stumbling blocks more frequently in davening. And they're signposts of telling you the movements of the king. Because they're surrounded, it's so protected. So the meaning of this allegory is, when you're not able to pray properly with the proper intent, know ye that there is extra protection around the king. That's where the king is. Yesh kana melech, there is the king here. Aval hu eina yachal lekarav el melech machmas gedel shmira shesavi melech. But you're encountering conflict in your path towards the king because there's so many obstacles in the form of smelly men. Lachen sarich lachazek atzma b'yira v'keach gadol. Therefore, one must strengthen themselves with fear and great strength. The kavani serut, the extra mindfulness. In order that you could come close and to pray before Hashem, and then actually you will succeed in davening with extra intent. It's an inspiration to know that you're getting really close when you come to those obstacles. Okay, the next one I think we'll hold off for tomorrow. So sit on that, meditate on that, and transform yourself with that.